Alright, we're going to look at how to remove and replace a spark plug. So if you come up here to the engine, we're going to use this Ford Escort because all the spark plugs are right up here in the front and it makes it very easy. Now remember, you don't want to do more than one at a time, because if you get these plugs out of order, you're never going to get the car to run again until you figure out the firing order, and that's a very complicated job. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to remove the spark plug boot from one of the spark plugs to remove it. So I'm going to take the second one here. Remember, don't pull it from the wire, pull it from the rubber boot itself. So after removing it, once again, grab it from the boot, not from the wire. Remove that, set that aside for the moment. Next, you're going to take your wrench with an extension and make sure you have a spark plug socket. Remember, a spark plug socket can be identified by the fact that you can put a wrench on the end of it here, and if you look inside, it's got a rubber grommet. Always make sure that rubber grommet is in there. Once we do that, we can stick it down into this hole where our spark plug's at. Now remember, to take anything off, we want to go counterclockwise. So I'm going to go counterclockwise to loosen it up. Usually, once these get loose a little bit, they're very easy to take out. So I'm going to remove my wrench and see if I can do it by hand. Just turn my extension. Until it comes out. Ooh, that is really ugly. Okay, so what you'll notice here, notice the rubber boot inside here, grabbing firmly onto the spark plug. You notice this spark plug definitely is ready to be replaced. It's burnt out, it's got some carbon building up on the end of it. This one's got way more than 50,000 miles on it, and it's time to change it. You also notice that it's got some buildup out here on the side, which is kind of unusual. And this is where the spark has actually been jumping to the block instead of across the gap up here. So this is a different problem altogether. So once we have our spark plug and we're ready to put the new ones back in, you're going to want to make sure that they're properly gapped. Now to do that, we need to either go online or use Mitchell On Demand and figure out what the gap is for this car. I happen to know that this car is 45 thousandths of an inch. So I can look here on my spark plug gapper and find the one that says 45 thousandths of an inch. And I can use that to see if our gap is correct. And you'll notice our gap is a little bit wide because this just goes in too easily. So using this end of the spark plug tool, we're going to put that on there, and we're going to bend that and close that gap a little bit. After we close the gap a little bit, we take our 45 thousandths, check it again. Notice it's still not tight enough, so I'm going to do a little bit more and check it again. And now our 45 thousandths won't fit through at all, so that's too close. So we'll go the other way this time and bend it open a little bit more. You can see the process. Now we've got it just right. That barely squeaks through. Now we know that that spark plug gap is at 45 thousandths of an inch. So if this was our new plug, properly gapped, we can put it back into the car. Remember, if you don't have the proper gap on the spark plug, if the gap is too close, the spark will be very weak. It'll be a little bit of an orange flame instead of the blue flame that you're looking for. And if the gap is too wide, the car will not spark at all and you won't have any ignition. So, now that we've got this properly gapped, we need to put this back in correctly. Remember, never try to reinstall one of these with it on the wrench. So I'm going to take the socket only, put the spark plug in there so that it locks into place. Because remember, it's down in the bottom of this hole and we don't want to just drop it in there. Now, notice I don't have the ratchet on there, just the extension. I'm going to put this back into the hole, and by hand only, I'm going to move it around until it locks in and starts screwing in. Now it's going into the hole the way I want it. Remember, these blocks are made out of aluminum, and it's very easy to mess up the threads on the spark plug. And if you do that, then you have a whole nother problem. So now that I've got that pretty much in as tight as possible, we're going to screw that all the way down until it stops. I'm not putting, this is very light, I'm not putting any pressure at all on this. There. So now it's stopped. If this is a brand new spark plug, at this point you want to put about 1/4 of a turn to 1/2 a turn to smash the aluminum gasket. Remember, on the bottom of a spark plug, there's an aluminum gasket that's shaped like this. And what happens is when you tighten that up for the very first time, that aluminum gasket gets crushed flat to fit perfectly and make an airtight seal. The second time you put a spark plug in, that aluminum has already been smashed flat, which is why we don't really want to clean and reuse a spark plug. We want to put new spark plugs in. So if this was a new one, we would put another 1/4 to half a turn here to smash that aluminum flat. However, this is not a new one, so all we're going to do is we're going to tighten it up till it just stops, and we're just going to give a little bit more of a turn, and that's it. Okay? We don't want to go too hard, because if you try to turn this too hard, you will strip this out very easily, as it is aluminum, and then, like I said, we'll have to pull the whole engine apart to fix the head on this car. So that's all it takes. We're going to remove that. Oh, we have another problem. As we tried to take that off, the rubber grommet was too strong and held onto my spark plug socket. So to do that, I'm going to stick this back in there, lock it back in, and this time I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure, like as an angle, to help me remove that spark plug socket so it comes out of there. Alright. And finally, we want to put our boot back on. Remember, only do these one at a time. So now that I've replaced that new spark plug, I'm going to make sure the boot goes back on, and you should feel it click back into place like that. And once it clicks back into place, I would then move on to the next spark plug, one at a time. Alright, let's take a look at one more type of spark plug here. This is really close to a coilover plug type of system. This, it doesn't have a coil over top, but the way that this hooks into the spark plug is exactly the same. So once again, you've got a boot here. Don't pull it by the wire, pull it by the boot, and it comes out. Notice we have this long plastic piece here. If this was a coilover plug system, this would look exactly the same, except we'd have a coil up here at the top. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. Spark plug down in the hole. Remember, you got to make sure it has that rubber grommet. Once I break it loose, I'm simply going to use my fingers to undo this. And out it comes. You notice this spark plug is in much better condition than the first one we looked at. I would still want to check the gap and then replace it, or replace it with a new spark plug. Notice on this one the aluminum gasket I was talking about. See how it's already smashed flat? That's why it doesn't want to seal properly the second time we reinsert it. So with this locked into place, I'm going to redo this. Notice by hand, the ratchet's completely disengaged. I'm going to get that started. I know it's started down there now. There, it's stopped. I'm going to put this back on. And remember, if it was a brand new plug, we'd give it about a half a turn. But since this is not a brand new plug, we're just going to give it a little bit more. And that's all it is. And the same thing happens here. If I try to just pull this out, sometimes the spark plug socket will get left behind. So I'm going to put a little bit of a torque on it to pull that out with the plug. Then you're going to take your boot. Make sure you feel it go over the top of the spark plug. If it doesn't, like that, it's going to want to bounce back up. So feel around in there for the spark plug till you get it in the right spot, and then push it down on there nice and solid.